Ever wondered what the real cost of convenience is in our digital world? Tim Jensen, host of Intentionally Inconvenient, dares to question if convenience is truly the enemy of privacy. You'll explore the essence of privacy, why it's worth pursuing, and debunk the myth that it's a lost cause. Together, you will challenge the notion of, I have nothing to hide, and reveal why every bit of your information matters. Remember, all hope is not lost. It's time to reclaim your privacy in this intentionally inconvenient reality.
Hello and welcome to Intentionally Inconvenient, where we talk about personal freedom through securing our privacy. My name is Tim Jensen, and I'm your host. In our last episode, we talked about the enemies of our privacy. Today, we're going to go a step further, and we're going to discuss email and how it may just be the museum of you. I'll get into that in a minute, but first, let me talk about my former coworker. In my last job, I was actually in training for the job, and I was in this coworker's office, and they plopped their cell phone on their desk, and I could see on the screen this big red bubble. How many of you have big red bubbles on your phone screen? And this big red bubble had a number on it. And that number was not 2 digits. Certainly wasn't 1 digit. It wasn't 3 digits. It wasn't even 4 digits. It was a 5-digit number. It was over 31,000. That big number in the big red bubble was over 31,000. Now, those of you who have a cell phone, who have an iPhone or an Android, and have seen that big red bubble on your phone or on somebody else's phone, you understand that that person has over 31,000 unread emails. Over 31,000. Not to mention all of the email that was already read that they saved. We just don't delete our email. We store it, just in case, right? I am just as guilty of this. Now, I didn't have 31,000, but let me tell you a story. About 2 years or so ago, I went in to clean out my email. I had email in that email box from 15 years prior. And I'd stored it because, anyone who would have hacked into my email, they could have taken a free tour of my brain. They could have studied me, because let's face it, I'll explain that in a minute though, but first I want to talk about boxes. So as I've gotten older, I've seen this tendency in myself, and actually many older adults, they have this tendency to save boxes. Oh, that's such a good box. I might just need to use that sometime because it's such a good box. We get stuff now on a regular basis from online merchants like Amazon and so forth. Oh, it's such a good box. I want to save that box. And pretty soon we end up collecting boxes as a hobby, don't we? At some point we break down those boxes and we get rid of them en masse. And we ask ourselves, what was I thinking? Don't we tend to do that with a lot of things? Don't we tend to do that with a lot of things? We save this, we save that. We think we might need it, someday. Most of our email these days, for many people, for most people, is stored online. Now, it used to be, it was stored on your computer. We call that client side. This, I think, just based on my own life experience, I think this happened right around the time that smartphones became popular, specifically BlackBerries and iPhones. That was like way, way back, 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago. And we as a society gradually shifted to this web-based email instead of our client-based or our computer-based email. And we did it because of the smartphones. At least in my opinion, it was that. And what we did was we had the convenience of that smartphone, that BlackBerry, that iPhone, and we could read it, we could delete it right there or whatever. But we had it with us. We didn't have to wait till we got home to read it. And email became a lot more popular and a lot more, the term I guess these days is ubiquitous, right? It became much more common. So now what does that mean? We have to trust those web-based email providers, don't we? And when we have web-based email, isn't that so much more convenient for us? Because then we can read it right from our smartphone, right? Those of you that have listened to my channel know what question I'm going to ask next. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong if we are trusting our web-based email providers for all of that? Now, I am not going to jump off the bandwagon here and say, oh, you should go back to client-based email, you should get rid of your convenience. I'm not saying that. But let's talk for a minute about free email now. You've probably heard this phrase many, many times that if the product is free, it's a good chance that you are the product. There ain't no free lunch. People don't just give away stuff for free. They expect to make a profit. Google's not just a nice organization of really happy people. They're in business to make a profit, or they're not in business. So how are you the product if the product is free? Well, let's think about this for a second. Your email can and is being scanned and stored by that free email provider. Permanently stored. It really is the museum of you. And if they scan and store all that email, remember I said I had like 15 to 18 years worth of email stored? They have computers that can go and they scan for keywords. What do you prioritize? What keywords keep reappearing? I'm kind of going off my list here in front of me. What common phrases do you use? They scan it for your contacts or your people. So every time you enter a contact into your phone, it uploads to your service provider and it's stored. So who do you feel is important enough to save their contact information into your phone and thus in your email client? What points of contact do you save of their profile? Name, address, phone number, spouse, children, special information that's unique to that person. When did you add them? Because they put the date and time that you add them in that database. If you delete them, when did you delete them and why did you delete them out of it? Most of the time they can figure that out based on behaviors that you performed in the past, in the present, and the future. Let's move on. Your email could be scanned for calendar activities. What is your schedule? Where are you going? When are you going there? How long are you staying there? What else will be at that time? Who else will be there at that time? What activity are you going to? Your calendar activities are all scanned, stored, and analyzed. I guarantee you it's analyzed. It's scanned for locations. Where did you go? Where did you get? When did you get there? What are your habits? What stops do you make that are out of your routine when you go to that place? What are your routines? It scans for location and timestamps each location. And it recognizes patterns. Let's continue. It's scanned for family and friends. Who are you related to? Who are your friends? It's scanned for your occupation. What do you do for a living? How long have you been there? Are you looking for a new occupation? Do you have a passion for what you do, or is it, just a job? That happens, right? We all have that time where something's just a job, but other times we have a passion for it. It's scanned for your recreation. So what do you do for fun? Are you an athlete? Are you kind of artsy? Are you a musician? What are you a photographer? Do you like hiking? What do you do for fun? Your email is scanned for your motivation. What motivates you? What keeps you up at night? What gets you up in the morning? What do you spend your money on? What are you shopping for regularly? and spending your money on regularly. Maybe you're just shopping, but you don't actually spend money, and then all of a sudden you buy it. Which emails do you frequently leave unopened and unread? So your contact list is stored, and it's not just for you, but also for the company who provides your email. And many email providers include the calendar service as well, because much of your email communication involves scheduling. It's just how we are. We're very time-based. We're geography-based. We are relationship-based. So let me review very quickly. The email provider has your personal communication via your email. They have your contact list of all your people, and they have your calendar. Let me ask you again, what could possibly go wrong? You're being studied. I'm being studied because they can scan and read it. You see, free has a cost. Rewind this and listen to some of the stuff we just discussed. Free has a cost. There ain't no free lunch. It all has a cost. Now, that's just 3 services. That's just 3 points of contact. That's only 3. And see how much information that we already have about a person? And yet we just accept this as normal because, it's okay with us, right? Because it's free. If you really want to get a kick out of that, rewind that and you can watch it again. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But anyway, we need a mindset shift. Free is great for businesses because they collect information. But free is terrible for customers. Free is much more expensive than paying for the service. How many times have we heard there ain't no free lunch, and yet we still give it away? It's not free. It may not cost you money, but maybe it should. Now, let's stop there and see how we can retain and maintain our privacy by, oh my gosh, paying for our email. Yes, that's a definite possibility. So instead of exchanging our personally identifying information for free email, for free calendar, for free contact list, for free GPS, oh my goodness, there is a list a mile long of all the free stuff that you can get with certain providers. Instead of doing that, let's say that we're going to pay for it with money. Oh my goodness, that's a heresy. You're a heretic. You're going to pay with money for your email? Are you nuts? How could you pay for email? How can I pay for email? I would pay for it with US dollars, cash, money. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of competitive intelligence? So I looked up on Investopedia.com. What is competitive intelligence? I'm going to read this word for word just so you can hear it. Competitive intelligence, sometimes referred to as corporate intelligence, refers to the ability to gather, analyze, and use information collected on competitors, on customers, and other market factors that contribute to a business's competitive advantage. Competitive intelligence is important because it helps businesses understand their competitive environment and the opportunities and challenges that it presents. Businesses analyze the information to create effective and efficient business practices. The information you're giving away in your email is being analyzed, it's being studied, and it's being used against you. Competitive intelligence refers to the ability to gather and use information on factors that affect a company's competitive advantage. Organizations analyze collected data and information to develop effective and efficient business practices. It can be classified as myopic-oriented, tactical intelligence, or long-term focused strategic intelligence. Gathering data and information is more complex than just conducting a simple internet search, because it's being analyzed. Do you know who the biggest customers in the retail chains are? Or were? It's each other. Companies regularly shop their competition to gather information. They spend big money to gather information. Back in the day, Woolworth absolutely was shopping the competition, was shopping Sears, was shopping, I can't think of them off the top of my head and I didn't write them down, but they spent big money. Amazon and Walmart and Target and Google and Microsoft and Apple, they spend billions of dollars every year to collect information. Knowledge is power. So like I said a few episodes ago, we're going to go on offense. We're going to take an action to put an end to this data collection for us personally. We might not be able to change the world, but we can change our world. I'm going to give you an example of what I use now. It's a paid email service that has these features, something called zero-knowledge encryption, end-to-end encryption. Encryption is not something I'm going to get into this episode, but it is something I want to talk about in the future. It's basically making it so that a human being cannot understand it. It's in a different code. We used to do this as kids. We used to come up with our secret code and we would write it. And Pig Latin is an example of encryption. It's a real, very basic, but we're not talking plainly. We're having to think about what we're saying. It's not very complicated either, obviously. But not only can they not read or scan my email, but they cannot reset my password. And we've talked about that before too in past episodes. Not being able to reset my password prevents people from social engineering us. From going in, calling up the company and saying, I need you to reset my password, and then they intercept it, and all of a sudden they access it. Can't happen. Not with zero-knowledge end-to-end encryption. There used to be, this is a great reason, by the way, to use a password manager. Because if you forget or lose your password, you're locked out forever. Forever's a long time. If you haven't seen that episode yet about password managers, go ahead and watch that. We'll wait. You can come back and finish in a minute, but go ahead and watch that. Okay, I'm not going to wait. But anyway, the email remains anonymous to the service provider because it's encrypted. So they're getting money on the front end by me paying for the service instead of the back end by gathering intel on me. You can use a service provider. Get this is really cool. You can use a service provider like privacy.com to mask your payment information, including your identity and your credit card information. So now the service provider doesn't even know who you are. Think about that. Now, let me put a caveat in here. I am not encouraging you to break the law and then use this technique to hide from the law. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they don't really need to know who you are. They're getting paid. That's all they need to know. When you go through the drive-thru at your fast food restaurant and you pay them, they don't take your name, address, email, phone number. They don't take all that. They take your money. That's it. And that's what this does too. Then another thing that I like to use is an email alias service. So the email alias service, what that does is it forwards the email. Let's say it's frank@frank.com. And then it auto forwards to my end-to-end encrypted service, to my real email address. Now the person emailing me doesn't even have my real email address, so that will not show up in search engines. That will not show up in databases that end up getting breached. And for every service provider that I use a different alias. So if I am going to send an email to Facebook, it's going to be Facebook@ and then some domain name. If I'm going to send an email to Walmart, it's going to be Walmart@ and then some domain name. And it doesn't even have to be that simple. It could be something even more complex because guess what? I'm going to store it in my password manager so I don't have to remember what it is. I won't even know the email address. I'll have to go into my password manager to find it. Zero knowledge works both ways too. I don't have to remember all this stuff because it'll stay in my password manager. Did you watch that video yet? Go back and watch the video on password managers. But wait till you're finished. I was kidding earlier. I can even change my email address with my provider without having to migrate all of the existing email to a new account. Because this email has email aliases, I can just create a new alias, delete the original one, and there I have it. I haven't lost anything because it's still in this virtual email box, but with a different email address attached to it now. Hasn't gone anywhere. What an awesome idea. We don't need to identify ourselves by our email address anymore. Eventually, we're going to talk about phone numbers for the same purpose, but not this episode. The company that I use is called Proton, and you can find Proton at proton.me. And the Proton Mail is end-to-end encrypted. It's zero-knowledge encrypted. It includes a calendar for the paid service. It includes something called a virtual private network, or VPN, which all that does is encrypt your internet traffic from your device to the other end, so that your service provider can't make sense of it, and nobody can intercept it along the path to the end result. We'll talk about VPNs in a separate episode because that's a very important topic. But I pay for the VPN as part of the email service. I also have an encrypted calendar. Now I can read it and I can share it with other Proton users if I want to, but it can't be read by Proton and it can't be read outside unless I have the password, unless someone has the password. The service provider cannot read, scan, or store the information. So if they can't do that, there's no tour of my museum. It's not going to be there. But I can use the calendar in conjunction with my email. So there is that little bit of convenience, but it's encrypted, so it's not an enemy of privacy in this case. Now, they have other services. They have a password manager. I don't use that. I keep that separate because I don't want to put too many eggs in one basket. So you can go to proton.me. By the way, Proton is not sponsoring this episode, so I feel free to talk about them. One thing that I will be putting together, and I will announce this in a future episode, is a product that you can get a hold of about how to have a spam-free email account and how to eliminate spam forever. Stay tuned. As that is available, I will let you know in a future episode about that. So, key takeaways. There ain't no free lunch. If the product is free, you are the product. And competitive intelligence is how these companies make their money. So we need to be more vigilant at protecting our own privacy, because that can come back to haunt us later on, because they'll sell that information to a data broker. And when they do that, it ends up on the web, and you can Google it, and there it is. Or you can, whatever search engine of choice that you use. You shouldn't have the history of your life scanned and stored as your email service provider, so that they can go back 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years and see how you think and how you've changed and what your habits are. It's none of their business. It's your business. Privacy is the right to control access to ourselves. Let me say that again. Privacy is the right to control access to ourselves. We need to be better at keeping our privacy and not just giving it away for free. This is Tim Jensen, host of Intentionally Inconvenient, and I hope that you will take this to heart and consider getting away from free email and finding a paid email service, even if it's not Proton. Maybe it's Tuta, T-U-T-A. You can do a search and find that one too. It's also end-to-end encrypted. But for now, this is Intentionally Inconvenient. I'm Tim Jensen. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. Stay private.
That's all for now from Intentionally Inconvenient, leaving you with a challenge to question the cost of online convenience. If you want to keep learning, subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Your reviews and 5-star ratings help reach more listeners. Until next time, remember, your privacy is never a lost cause. Stay safe, stay private.